You know, as an unintelligent person, I'm not really keen on patterns because I don't notice them. I don't have the ability to notice them. But there is something that even someone like me has noticed. Joe Biden, I don't know if you've heard, is in serious trouble. This Hunter Biden stuff is serious. And remember, the Hunter Biden stuff is Joe Biden stuff. They are attached because it was Joe's business, not Hunter's business. And yet, every time some bad news pops up about this, they seem to do something else to Donald Trump to bump old Grandpa Poopy Pants out of the news and usher in a news cycle for Trump. Maybe it's my imagination, though. Let's ask someone smart about it. Joining me now, Evita Duffy-Alfonso, right here for The Federalist. Evita, man, it sure seems like, I guess maybe it's just a coincidence. It seems like this happens a lot, though.
Oh, it does. And the vast majority of the time, you have a massive, explosive story in the Biden crime family scandal. And then you get a development in another Trump indictment or another, Trump investigation. This last one is a little different. This last one was actually the anniversary of Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And then suddenly we get a massive, indictment for Trump in Georgia. So anything that could potentially make the president look bad is immediately followed up with another Trump indictment or investigation.
Evita, you wrote a piece for The Federalist that was honestly eye-opening and heartbreaking, that Vladimir Putin, famous for locking up his political opponents, didn't lock up his rival for as long as they're trying to send Trump away for it. It's hard for Americans, myself included, to accept what we've become, but this is very clearly what we've become.
Oh, and it's a ridiculous story, right? Because you have Alexei Navalny, who is the primary political opponent to Vladimir Putin, getting more prison time on top of prison time by Vladimir Putin's administration. And then you have members of the Biden administration who are either responsible or complicit with the persecution of President Trump, who's Biden's primary political opponent, and they're condemning Vladimir Putin with zero awareness for the irony. One of them is Antony Blinken, who is the one who, famously interfered in the 2020 election by orchestrating that letter from intelligence officials saying that they believed the Hunter Biden laptop, which very much was real, was actually Russian disinformation. This man is condemning Vladimir Putin and staying silent on all of the Trump indictments. It's absolutely ridiculous.
People ask me a lot of times for a book to read because I love history books and things like that. And one of the ones I always recommend to them is The Last Crusade. There are many great books written about the Spanish Civil War. Last Crusade is one of my favorites, but I know this is a subject you're passionate about. And in light of the fact the FBI is currently infiltrating the Catholic Church in America, maybe you should help bone us up on the issue a little bit.
So the Spanish Civil War is actually something that I learned about in high school, but I learned it from the perspective of the communists, which is usually how American history has been twisted around these days. And the lucky thing for me is I knew the real history because my family actually was persecuted during the Spanish Civil War for being Catholics and for being opponents of communism. I had an extended family member who was a priest who was actually murdered. Others in my family were imprisoned by communist radicals simply because they were Catholic and they were opposing communist ideology. And I think the same thing is really happening here in the United States, and this is why history is so key, to know history, to not allow it to be twisted by the left, which it is in America. What's happening right now is a similar demonization of Catholics, and it's not because they really believe sincerely that Catholics are white supremacists, which is what the FBI was alleging. It's because Catholicism stands in opposition to authoritarianism and really to this socialist market economy that our government is really spiraling us into.
Evita, the church as a whole, Catholic, Christian, whatever it may be, they have failed, in my opinion, in taking a firm enough stand. They've been very well hands off. Well, hey, let's just turn the other cheek. It's been a whole lot of that for virtually my entire 42 years on this planet. The church is going to have to change that because the war has already been declared on them, whether they want to believe that or not.
We have a sickness in the church. That is 100% correct. And I wrote an article a while ago when the FBI memo came out. Only one bishop stood out against it. Then the American Catholic Conference of Bishops stood out against it and said, hey, this is not okay. You can't be infiltrating our churches and surveilling our parishioners. And the rest of them were remaining silent. Meanwhile, they're preaching about LGBTQ issues, right? There are literal priests and bishops who are taking up the torch with that, and illegal immigration. They're supporting it and actually encouraging it. Our bishops have a real problem, and their job is to shepherd their sheep, and to defend the faithful. And they have completely abandoned the faithful. And I think it may have something to do with the type of Catholics that are being targeted by the FBI. It's specifically traditional Catholics, those who attend Latin Mass, those who hold more conservative viewpoints. And I think, unfortunately, many of the bishops don't hold conservative viewpoints and are okay with seeing Catholics that are more conservative and traditional being persecuted. And the problem is that it might be traditional Catholics now, but it'll eventually get downstream to them. And it's everybody's problem, not just traditional Catholics.
What is the problem with these guys? Are they weak, or are they too stupid to realize they're coming for them one day too?
I think it's a combination of both, and I also think that there's some politics in it, right? I mean, being a bishop is theoretically a position of influence, and I think that they like rubbing shoulders with powerful Democrats. They don't like upsetting people like Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden, doing the right thing, saying, hey, if you are supporting child killings, you should not be receiving communion on Sundays. They don't care about that. They don't care about really defending the church, because I think that perhaps power and influence has got into their heads, and unfortunately, they will have to answer to that one day, because there was a famous quote that said, the road to hell is led by littered with the skulls of dead bishops. I'm probably butchering with corrupt or sinful bishops, so I'm butchering the phrase, but it's really their responsibility to be defending the faithful, and they're not doing it. And I think that there is definitely corruption and sin that's at the heart of their inaction.
Evita, thank you. Come back soon.
Thank you.
I have great news. If you enjoyed that, I have a YouTube channel you can subscribe to. Whatever I do, it'll be right there on YouTube, so go subscribe today.